Thousands of years ago, there was a famous Chinese general with a reputation for being an astute and cunning leader. One day, at the end of a long campaign, this general decided to stop in a stronghold with a small battalion of soldiers, sending his main fighting force ahead to rest elsewhere. Meanwhile, one of his enemies catches wind of this and decides to march his army of hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the general's all-but defenseless position. In the middle of the night, the general's awoken by one of his men, who breaks the news. The enemy's close. They'll be there before daybreak, and the tiny band of soldiers in the stronghold will be no match for their numbers. Hearing this, the general stops and pauses. Understanding his predicament, he instructs his men to stand down, open the gates, take down the banners from the walls, and hide. The general then removes his armor, dons a cloak, and sits on the battlements playing a mandolin as he looks out at the approaching army. The enemy leader soon arrives. He recognizes the general immediately and orders his forces to halt. He stops to think. He knows this general better than anyone, including his reputation for wily deeds and setting deadly traps. He waits some more. The presence of this infamous general, sitting there with such nonchalance, makes him question himself. Was the information he received false? Is the general luring him into a trap? Or is it a double bluff? Is this a ploy to make him question himself? And the general is, in fact, as defenseless as he seems. He waits some more, and then he orders his forces to retreat. The moral of the story is, first, your reputation is crucial and can deliver all sorts of positive outcomes. Second, there's often a cleverer, more strategic way to achieve your goals. Never assume it takes sweat, blood, and tears. Look for a method of attaining the same results with less effort. There was once a man who had 4 young sons. Wanting to teach them about the dangers of judging things too rapidly, he decided to send each of them on a journey, one after the other, to a distant pear tree. Each son went in a different season, the first in winter, the second in spring, and so on. At the end of the year, he brought his children together and asked them what they'd seen. The son who'd traveled in winter described a gnarled, twisted, and barren tree that stood stark and ugly against the land. The son who went in spring disagreed. No, he said. The tree seemed full of hope and promise, with green buds along its branches. The third son, who'd traveled in summer, disagreed once more. The pear tree he'd seen was covered in beautiful blossom that looked and smelled divine. Finally, the last son, who'd made the journey in fall, disagreed again, describing a tree laden with sweet and delicious pears that tasted better than any he'd eaten before. When each son had spoken, the father said they were all correct, because they'd only seen but one season of the pear tree's life. He explained to his sons that it's foolish and impossible to judge something in this manner. The essence of something, whether it's a tree or their fellow man, can only be measured as a whole at the end of the year, having seen it in its fullness. To make your judgment in winter is to miss the promise of spring, the beauty of summer, and the fruit in fall. Moral of the story: refuse to judge yourself, life, or other people based upon a single mistake or challenging time. Refuse to let the pain of one season destroy the joy of those to come. In ancient times, there was a queen who ordered her soldiers to maneuver a boulder into the middle of the main road to and from town. The queen then hid, watching to see who would stop to do the right thing and move it out of the way again. Wealthy merchants and courtiers passed the boulder, barely giving it a second thought. A few of them blamed their queen for not keeping the roads clear, yet none stopped to do anything. One day, a peasant walked along with a sack of vegetables to sell at market. He stopped, laid these down, and then pushed, tugged, huffed, and heaved the stone away. Upon picking up his vegetables, the peasant saw a large purse full of gold and a handwritten note from the queen herself where the boulder had been. The gold was a reward for whoever removed it from the road. Moral of the story: laziness will never get you anywhere in life. Success almost always takes humility and hard work. There was once a professor who wanted to go down the river, so he approached a local boatman who agreed to row him downstream for a small sum of money. As they made their way downstream, the professor decided to show off his intelligence and high education, so he decided to test the boatman. Taking up a stone he picked from the riverbank, the professor asked the boatman,
"Have you ever studied geology?"
The boatman looked at him and said,
No.
hardly even understanding what the word meant. The professor then said,
"I'm afraid 25% of your life is gone."
The boatman feels really bad about his ignorance, but continues to row on. As they move further downstream, the river currents begin to get stronger and stronger and stronger. The professor picks a leaf up and asks condescendingly,
"Boatman, have you studied botany?"
Confused, the boatman again said.
No.
The professor again shakes his head and says,
50% of your life is gone.
He then signals him to carry on rowing. As they move downstream, the currents gets even stronger and stronger, the water is moving faster, and the boat is beginning to sway violently. Suddenly, the professor sees a mountain range, points at it, and asks the boatman,
Have you studied geography?
Feeling very inferior and humiliated, the boatman again says.
No.
The professor snaps back and says,
I thought so. Then 75% of your life is gone.
At this point, the river became a raging torrent. The water is moving so strongly that the boatman loses control of the boat and it smashes against the rocks and springs a leak and begins to sink. This time, the boatman turns to the professor and asks,
Professor, do you know how to swim?
To which the professor answers,
No?
Then I'm afraid 100% of your life is gone.
and he leaps off the boat and powers his way to the shore. The moral of the story is, we all have our own skills and intelligence. Don't judge just because someone didn't have the opportunity to study. You can have a bachelor's degree and still be an idiot. An old man lived in the village. He was one of the most unfortunate people in the world. The whole village was tired of him. He was always gloomy, he constantly complained, and was always in a bad mood. The longer he lived, the more bile he was becoming and the more poisonous were his words. People avoided him because his misfortune became contagious. It was even unnatural and insulting to be happy next to him. He created the feeling of unhappiness in others. But one day, when he turned 80 years old, an incredible thing happened. Instantly, everyone started hearing the rumor, the old man is happy today. He doesn't complain about anything, smiles, and even his face is freshened up. The whole village gathered together. The villagers asked the old man, What happened to you? The old man said, Nothing special. 80 years I've been chasing happiness, and it was useless. And then I decided to live without happiness and just enjoy life. That's why I'm happy now. The moral of the story is, don't chase happiness. Enjoy your life, for happiness is often found in the simple moments, the journey, and the gratitude for what you have, rather than in the pursuit of what you lack. Two lumberjacks of equal skill, experience, and stature work side by side, chopping down trees together every single day. However, one lumberjack works non-stop without taking a break, whereas the other takes an hour-long lunch break every afternoon. Despite working for less time, both lumberjacks inevitably chop the same number of trees by the end of each working day. Puzzled and frustrated, the lumberjack who works all day long asks the other how he manages to chop just as much as him while still taking a break. To this, he responds, It's simple. I spend that hour at home sharpening my axe. The moral of the story is, breaks are vital to productivity. Work smart, not hard. One day, a man walked past a camp of elephants. Looking closer, he was surprised to see that these mighty animals weren't held in cages or kept in chains. The only thing stopping them from escaping, a thin rope tied from one of their legs to a simple pole in the ground. Confused as to why they didn't use their strength to break the rope, he asked the trainer why they weren't attempting to run away. To this, the trainer replied, "As baby elephants, we use the same system, but at that age, the rope is strong enough to stop them from escaping. They grow up like this, believing they can never break the rope, so even as adults, they stay put." In other words, these powerful, magnificent, and intelligent elephants didn't believe they could free themselves, so they never tried. The moral of the story is, our personal beliefs are powerful beyond measure and often dictate our outcomes. They can work for or against us. Identify your limiting beliefs so you can push against them. If you find value in this content, please like, share, and follow.